fungus. Unfortunately, I did battle with the cactus, and the cactus won. So anyway, but we have today as our speaker, and Sam, if you are not already recording, this might be a good time for you to start. We're going to be recording this, so y'all didn't miss it, but if anybody did, they can go and watch it on our YouTube channel. And I just want to say, are you saying you need one of the handouts? Okay, good. I just want to say you can attend up to 3 things with the Nature Club to decide whether or not you want to join, and then after that you can make a decision. So all those things that we talked about, you can go ahead and come to all of them. Okay, my husband's telling me to speed up, which is very hard for me because I love to talk. Now you're wondering, what is NPSOT? NPSOT is Native Plant Society of Texas. Randy has been involved with that for 1,000,000 years. And there is so much. She's a past president. She's been very involved with all of their semi-annual plant sales. She's been involved with so many things related to that. They have a landscaper certification course because they're trying to get landscapers to use native plants in our yards and other people's yards. So she's been involved with that. And one other thing that I want to mention about her, she doesn't like to dance, but that wasn't it. The other thing is that Randy really also walks the walk. Or she plants the plants. If you went to her yard right now, you would not be happy because her plants are asleep. But you give it a month or two and all of her native plants will be awake. And she has a beautiful yard. She was on the Garden Club garden tour one year, and her yard shows you how you can use native plants strategically, and not a hodgepodge, but something that ends up just beautiful. So, without saying more, I would like to introduce Randy Pensabene. Thank you.
Thank you, Candy. Thank you, everyone, for coming out today. I'm looking forward to this. It's been a while since I've gotten in front of a live audience, so this will be different. So bear with me here and there as I blank out. This is nature notes, so I don't need that. And someone left there. Like a clean workspace.
That was mine.
All right, no distractions. I am with the Native Plant Society of Texas, and have been since I retired and moved here, and have a background in engineering and science, and I wanted to get into something where I kept exercising my brain and learning new things, and it was scientific enough to study the plants, and I like being outside, so it just combined everything I love. The Native Plant Society, our mission is to help promote the use and conservation of native plants. So our state motto is native plants equal healthy habitats. And native plants are the base of everything else that goes on. If you're a birder, if you like butterflies, you better like your native plants. And you're gonna find out why today. If I don't drive that one point home, then I haven't done my job. So what are the benefits? The number one benefit is that it's the foundation of the healthy, functioning ecosystem. Number two, these are the plants that have evolved here. They have co-evolved with the species. So there's a symbiosis between the two that are necessary for each to exist. And then they provide an interesting Texas-style landscape. There's nothing worse than going to a yard here, and I hope no one has a palm tree, because I'm going to say a palm tree, because it looks so out of place. And there's such a variety of native plants that you should never be bored. In nature, all things are connected, and that's something we're trying to figure out. I don't know if we're there yet, but hopefully we're getting there. And they did a study at the University of Delaware with the Doug Tallamy, and a lot of you, if you're into native plants, you know the name Doug Tallamy. He's very big in that field. And they did a study of people's yards, and these are landscapes like yours and mine, where the college students went out, they counted the number of native plants, they counted the number of invasive and non-native plants, and they looked at how many birds visited the place, how many butterflies visited the place. And then they surmised that it takes 70% biomass, which means total roof area, if you will, just to sustain the current bird population. Now, if you want to increase that bird population, you need to plant even more native plants. So, and this is highly doable these days. It's very popular. We're trying to help get the plants out there, and you'll hear more about that later. But 96% of your bird species rely on these insects. If you don't have the native plants, you don't have the insects, you don't have the caterpillars. If you don't have the caterpillars, the birds don't have the food to feed their babies. They have to fly further and further. You can't just put out a hummingbird feeder and call it done. This is sugar water. This provides nothing in the way of protein for them. You need to put out the nectar plants. With the nectar, they also get insects, and that helps feed them and feed their young. And wildlife relies on a multitude of resources. They need, of course, like you and me, they need a place to live, they need food, and they need water. So those are the things we try to provide. And then this is a concept I debated about bringing up, but it's very important. 14% of native plants they're called keystone plants. They support 90% of the butterfly and moth species. So what this means is there's some plants that are better than others. And certainly the native plants are better than the foreign exotics, which are useless to something that's never eaten it before or evolved with it. So, and your yard could be a big help. There's only so much natural area, and it's disappearing around here. So if you want to have a creative landscape, it's beautiful. Native plants evolved in the area. They like our soil. They like our heat. And anyway, they just work together. And the number one point is to evaluate the plant's ecological functions. So when you go out, and the thing I hear the most is people say, I want color. I want color. And it's like, yeah, that's important too, but what I want you to be thinking when you go out is, I want to know what this plant supports. Am I going to get, lizards? Is this something the birds can eat? Is this something that's going to support butterflies? And if you plant a butterfly garden, expect things to get eaten. It's okay. They will come back. I've had my milkweed stripped to the bone, and they came back. They didn't care. That's how they evolved, and that's what they're supposed to do. So don't reach for the bug spray either. So if you start understanding these relationships, it's just exciting to get out there and look close at your native plants and see what's crawling on it, and what's eating that flower, and what's eating that leaf. And then overall, it just should look like Texas. Something unique. Texas is unique. Your yard should be unique and reflect your personality too. So, the builders come in, they plant the cheapest, most easiest plant there is to grow. It's junk food plants. And they push this junk food. The whole landscape industry is built around cheap junk food plants. They're easy to propagate, and bless the native plant growers, because those are a lot harder to propagate. So they don't really like a pot, and they may not look as good in a pot as some of the other things that have been, pumped with lots of water and lots of fertilizer. But the native plants will survive once you get them in the ground and get them established. So if you want to know if a plant is invasive, go to texasinvasives.org and look it up. This is right along, all up and down the San Gabriel River Trail. It's Nandina domestica. It no doubt fell out of someone's garden. A bird pooped it out on the trail, and it just keeps going. So, keep moving. Invasive plant definition, for you that don't know, it's a species that is non-native to the ecosystem. So that's when you bring things in. What they do is they look along the longitudinal line, and they grab things from the Mediterranean and bring them over here because they can survive on our, well, that was me. They can survive in our temperature ranges, but they may not like our soil, so you may end up doing a lot of work to make them survive in our soil. And their introduction causes or is likely to cause economic or environmental harm, or harm to human health. Now, mainly it's environmental harm, because what they do is they outcompete the native plants because they have no natural predators. The deer aren't eating them, the bugs aren't eating them, nobody's eating them, nobody's getting any value from them other than, you know, you get to look at them. Now, possibly in Andina, what happens is they're used to Latin landscaping. Sometimes the birds will eat these seeds, but they take them out to the river where they've got nice fertile ground and they plant them for us. And then they take over. And 80%, that's a huge number, 80% of the invasive species came from the landscaping industry. So just beware when you go out and choose plants, and do your research so that you know what plant you're really getting. So anyway, like I said earlier, keystone plants, these are the plants that they vary hugely in how they support our butterflies and our caterpillars and our birds and other wildlife. You know, and birds are eaten by other wildlife, so we need the birds so that we have higher orders. And introduced plants are not the ecological equivalents, so consider that. And what else? Yes, and we don't even know, there's so many undocumented species of insects. We don't know when we take a plant out of the system if that plant was supporting what it was supporting higher up the chain. Be that, you know, there's plant-specific species that they only use one plant as their host plant. Like the monarchs just use milkweeds, that's their host plant. You take the milkweeds out of production, we don't have any monarchs, and that's what is happening. I just read today that something like 89.9% of the monarchs are gone since 1980. So,
It's crazy.
Deer, everyone's interested in deer. What can I do? The deer are eating all my plants. Well, first of all, that's going to continue to be an issue. They are going to eat your plants. Now, this is in my backyard, and this is a parade of deer coming through there. And the answer to the deer, the influences to deer is deer density. And also, it's important, and it's the humane thing to do, in my opinion, to cull the deer. Otherwise, they starve to death. They starve to death because they're forced to eat things that don't provide the value they need. Food available in the natural areas. As we continue to destroy our natural areas, as the housing continues to come in, we'll have more and more deer. And pathways through your yard, they have a general track they like to take, but the hungrier they get, the more they wander off of that path, looking for something, anything to eat. So sometimes you can put a plant in one place and it does fine. You put it in another place and they just destroy it. So, and honestly, I leave plants in the ground that they eat because if they're eating that, they're not bothering something else. So I've got horse herb all over my yard. They love horse herb. So they eat that and they stay out of my plants. It's amazing. Just amazing. This is just something I've observed over time. Overall, the palatability of the plant, that's about the only thing you have control over. And know that any new planting, they come out fresh out of the greenhouse. They're all like lettuce, you know, they're just waiting to be eaten. So if you look at a plant and you think lettuce, put a cage around it for a while, till it toughens up. Once they're established, once they get more mature, the leaves get thicker and harder, they're less palatable. So there's a lot of plants out there. So key, we need to protect Sun City's natural areas. It seems that every time we need a new hobby, they go out and they rake off a big piece of our nature area to put in more of, you know, radio cars and airplanes and pickleball courts and all that. They don't look at the manicured areas and say, oh, we could take this out of production, but no, they take the nature areas out of production. So that's one of my pet peeves. Garden design, like I said, you can put things in different places. You can use plants that stink and they don't like to hide other plants. So, and then just obstacles, big rocks, statues, fences, dogs, whatever, obstacles in their way. So, if you have a fence and they're still coming in your yard, you need to put something nice right where they land. They need a landing place to get over. So, but unpalatable plants, we're gonna discuss that a little bit. That's your older plants, number one, let them mature, cage them until they mature, and less palatable. This one, this is golden groundsel on the ground here. When I first planted it, they ate it all the time. They ate it, they ate it. It came back. It said, oh, deer ate me. I'm coming back. And then eventually they just quit eating it. And it may be the horse herb, and it may be that the plant toughened up. So native plants equal healthy habitats, and that's what we're going to talk about now, is some plants. Number one, everybody needs an oak tree. So if you don't already have an oak, put one in. Nationwide, 950 caterpillar species. Now, that's a huge number for one plant to support. And where do you think the birds go? They go to the oak tree. They put their nests there. But this tree is also a larval host, and it provides acorns for the birds and the mammals, and nesting and cover, and so many resources in this one plant. So we all need an oak tree. Cedar elm, this one gets maligned because of the seeds it puts out, but those seeds feed the birds. It's a wonderful, wonderful hardy tree. It requires little to no water. It breathes right through Uri with no problem at all. Gives a nice yellow fall color, and is fast growing and drought tolerant. So that's a good one. This one is Mexican plum. I'll tell those stories later, Sam. But Mexican plum, this one supports 456 calories. This is number 2. Let me just say that. It's a great replacement for Bradford pear. I was out in the parking lot last spring, went by a Mexican plum and heard all the buzzing, so I went over and looked, and it was just covered solid. I wanted to smell one of the flowers. I had to be real careful not to sniff up a bee. So I did that, and then I said, well, wait a minute, and I looked around, and there was a Bradford pear right across the street. So I went over to the Bradford pear, and I stood there, and I looked, and I looked, and I looked, and there were no pollinators on the Bradford pear because they had their preferred plant. They were over here at the Mexican plum. So, and in addition, it puts out little fruits. They're very nice. So a lot of support there for wildlife with the fruits, and it is also a larval host. So these are, again, multifunction plants. Yopon holly, we're all familiar with it, but this is a great plant for this area. In Houston, you can't give them away because they're everywhere, but in here, it works very well. The only thing I'll say is you need to put a little bit of green sand on it. It's called green sand to bring our soil so it can take up the nitrogen. If it gets chlorotic, put some green sand on it. It is evergreen, great berries. The mockingbirds camp out and protect these berries. It's used, this is a mockingbird nest down here. Comes in various forms, weeping. The dwarf one has no berries, has very little value, and you don't have to shape it into a ball, even if you do have one. but that's a personal choice. You can, these can take hedging. If you prefer a formal look, you can do it with native plants, but why would you go to all that work? Golden ball lead tree. How about if we use that instead of crepe myrtles? I'm so sick of crepe myrtles. And then everybody murders them. They lop off the limbs. And I'm sorry, but this pitiful habit is creeping over to our other trees. I'm looking around, seeing tree after tree that's just been hacked on. And this is not good for the health of the tree. This is not good for the health of the environment. And it's something, you know, they drive around in a truck. It's the anything for a buck truck. And they say, oh, I can cut that tree. Oh, I can make your grass grow by taking out all these limbs. And they cannot make that grass grow out of that tree, believe me. But they'll destroy your tree in the meantime. But this is a gorgeous, this one's covered in pollinators. This one's covered in pollinators. And it blooms all summer, just like a crepe myrtle would, blooms all summer. And it's a small tree, and it can be more vertical than this, and you can train it into a single trunk. So I have a single trunk. Texas sage comes in a whole ton of varieties. The old ones you see around with a sparse at the bottom and kind of half dead. A lot of that half dead is because they keep cutting off the new growth to hedging. So they keep hedging and hedging and hedging, and the poor plant's starving to death. But if you get a compact variety of the right size and put it in the right place, and please put it in full sun. If you put it in shade, it's not going to do well. It wants full sun, it wants to struggle, it wants no water. This is one of the xeric plants. I will match my yard against anyone, my yard for water against anyone with rocks and cactus. And here you see the pollinators going for the flowers. So butterflies, insects, birds, hummingbirds. And it comes in a variety of colors of leaves and a variety of colors of flowers. Esperanza, you know, a lot of these plants will be familiar to you, to a lot of people. And we have a lot of new people moving into our area, so I wanted to cover some of these. Compact, again, Gold Star is much more compact. It doesn't, you know, reach the roof line before it flowers for you. Compact orange is a very nice other color as well. And most of these plants you're going to find at our plant sale or the Horticulture Club plant sale. Turk's cap, wonderful for hummingbirds. If you want hummingbirds, put in a Turk's cap. Blooms in the shade. It's so hard to find something that blooms in the shade. This is a stellar plant to put in that area. You can also eat these little fruits here. They're like little tiny crab apples. But it makes a nice big leaf. It's got the nice big leaves, so it looks really dramatic in the shade. You can do full sun, but you have to water it more. And the deer will eat the flowers some, but you get some and they get some, which is a win-win situation. But you can see the little hummingbird just going for it. He's so happy. White mist flower. This is absolutely one of those fall bloomers. Blooms off and on from spring on, but in the spring it jumps out with nice green lush leaves. And then in the fall, when everything else is done and the butterflies are desperate for nectar, it's going to jump over here on this plant. And this is my side yard, which only gets a couple of hours in the morning, and that's it. It's between two houses. And it's on the rising sun side. That's AM, I can tell you. Blooms like crazy. Very little water. All different types of butterflies. And very tolerant to various soils. Texas lantana. This lantana has multiple services as well. It's nectar for the butterflies, the hummingbirds. It's one of the #1 butterfly plants you want to put in if you want a butterfly garden. It's extremely hardy. I have all the irrigation shut off. It's between the street and my driveway, and I have all the irrigation shut off in that area. So it does not get irrigated. Now here, you can almost see, I don't have a real good picture of the seeds, but there's little black seeds all over. Once these bloom, They get these black seeds that the birds go crazy for. All those cultivars from over there, I don't know where they're from exactly, Mediterranean, I think. All the cultivars like, what is it, gold something, and whatnot, that I don't use, they bred all the seeds out of them. When the landscaping industry gets a hold of a good plant, first thing they do is start breeding for something else. They want to breed for continuous blooms. So for continuous blooms, which, believe me, this blooms all through the summer, including August, they breed out something. They breed out either the nectar, or they breed out the seeds, or they breed out some other desirable. It's like the golden, what is it? Red delicious apple. You know how that was bred? That was bred to be red. It has no flavor. You can pick up just about any other apple, but the golden delicious, no. I mean, red delicious. This is a fabulous butterfly plant. This is very important for the migrating monarchs. This is an annual, but it gets big. It gets as big as me. And it's just a wonderful plant. Blooms all through the fall. It'll bloom in the summer too. You can look these plants up. The information's on your sheet there. But what I'm talking about here, this is a larval host. This is what you're going to see on your plants. But that's okay. That plant does not care. That's what it's built to do. It'll come back, it'll look great, it'll survive. Talk about shade. Tropical sage is very, very hardy in the shade. It's also an annual to a very short-lived perennial. May live a couple of years. Lots of nectar, beautiful color, beautiful leaves. It's in the mint family, highly deer resistant. And so are these other plants I've been showing you, except the trees you need to cage until they get up above browsing height. So this is a great hummingbird plant too. Milkweeds, these are necessary. We need our native milkweeds. If you've got the other milkweeds you need to cut down in October. These are great. We're going to have these at the plant sale. We have Zizotes and we have orange milkweed. It's a host to more than just the monarch, and more than just the monarch visit it for nectar. All kinds of insects and birds visit it. And the birds come and pick off the caterpillars and the wasp. This is a little pollinator wasp right here. So when you find something on your plant, you might go inside and look it up on the internet and say, oh, that's got a benefit. Even the skunks that dig little holes all over my yard, they're aerating my yard for free. It's perfect. You just shove the dirt back in the hole and they move on. Blackfoot daisy, another short-lived, highly deer-resistant, evergreen, blooms all summer. What more could you want from a plant? It's really a happy, happy plant, beautiful daisy-like flowers. And you can trim it back and keep it a little neater. But I found this little guy here, he's eating that flower. I don't know who he is, I think he's a moth. But anyway, I like to get up there and see what's eating on it. This is a bee, a big old bumblebee, getting some nectar and some pollen. This is mealy blue sage. There's the standard mealy blue sage. There's Henry Dulberg, which is a deeper blue. And there's also a white one called Augusta Dulberg. Several varieties. Zixminia. This plant is another workhorse. This one you see in the medians along Sun City. It takes dry, it takes drought. The leaves are really fuzzy. I didn't put a good picture of a leaf on there, but these leaves are very like sandpaper. The deer don't like that on their tongue. But you can see these two guys are happy. They're out there just eating away. And I've had this entire plant just eaten again to the bones with caterpillars, because it is a host plant for the border patch, the middle mark, and another patch. So anyway, another great butterfly plant. But it blooms all summer and wonderful. Again, something you see on the medians here and used a lot as a ground cover is the Williamson. Now, the flowers are pretty inconspicuous. You can see we've zoomed in quite a bit. There's a flower, there's a little flower, but they're cute, and you can see them. But mostly they're for the pollinators, the little sweat bees and different things like that. Love this plant. And it's very deer resistant, it's very drought tolerant, and you can hedge it back or you can let it go. Another good shade plant is inland sea oats, also called river oats or wood oats.
It's cool looking.
It's a low bunch grass, but it makes a nice statement if it doesn't get watered too much. It stays in little bunches like this. This is up at Legacy Hills Park at the entrance. If you water more, it'll spread, and it does spread, but the birds go crazy for these seeds. And that is their winter food. People go out in the fall and hack everything down. Well, that's all the food for the winter, for the animals, for the birds. The stems of the plants are being used for nesting over winter. Leaves are being used. The seeds are there for the birds. So people keep coming by and going, "Are you gonna cut that down?" It's like, nope. Nope, not gonna cut it down till, think Valentine's Day. That's when you cut things down. After we've had some warm weather, everything's emerged and launched itself, then you can cut things back. A great grapevine I can recommend is gonna be this coral honeysuckle. And it's semi-evergreen, but it gives this beautiful red. Again, hummers go crazy, these tubular flowers. Whenever you see a tubular flower like that, the hummingbirds go crazy for it. It also gets berries for the birds, wherever those flowers are. It's going to follow up with these little berries that when they ripen, the birds will eat them. Also very deer resistant. Will they munch it? They might some. But as this matures and ages, it gets munched less and less. So I hope today you've learned that nothing works like natives, and that you will consider removing invasive species from your landscaping, one at a time. Doesn't have to be a big project. Take a bed, take a plant, whatever. Replace it with something valuable that's native and that supports our wildlife. And ideally, you would replace half your lawn with woody and herbaceous native species. But and when you go buy plants, consider not just your need to have lots of color, but that you want to have hummingbirds, you want to have birds, you want to have butterflies, you want to have skunks, you want to have whatever. But anyway, squirrels. Just invite wildlife into your yard, and it's very enriching. So I'm with the Native Plant Society. I'm in the Williamson County chapter. We meet at the Georgetown Library on the second Thursday. I'm going to give you a website, but we have all kinds of activities, much like Sun City does. But ours are focused on native plants. We do field trips, we do plant surveys, we have native plant sales. We go out to our nursery and help them with propagation, where we learn. We do demonstration gardens for nonprofits. We answer questions for people. If you get on our website, we can answer questions for you. And if you cut down a Bradford pear, we may come out and dance in your front yard. Anyway. So here's our website, our YouTube, our Facebook, our Instagram. If you want to find us, just type in NIPSOT, Williamson County. You can find us, or you can call me, email me. Please email me, don't call me. But no, send an email and ask anyone, they can find me. We have 2 plant sales coming up, so you can find your native plants. At NIPSOT, we're going to be at the Berry Springs Park and Pavilion on the 26th. That's Saturday, a week from this Saturday. And then shortly thereafter, the Horticulture Club is going to have their plant sale. We are strictly native. We have a plant list on our website. So if you get there, the advertisement for the plant list is pinned to the top, and you will be able to click on a plant list, read. Actually, it's the second posting, but you'll know, you can plan ahead and look up some plants and see. We have expert salespeople that will help you choose something. If you come in and say, I've got deer, sun, and no water, it's like, I'm taking you to Zexminia. You know, it's, come on down and we'll help you. The Horticulture Club also has people that know what they're doing. They have a mix of plants, and I will say that nobody's 100% native, most except me, and just because I like to study the plants. But, you know, 70% biomass is what you want to remember. You want to have a lot of native plants. The Horticulture Club will also have a lot of native plants and people that know about them, but they will have other plants. So you can have other plants. I won't sneak over in the middle of the night and take them out, but you can do that. We'll also have the vegetables and herbs. But we'll have the native milkweeds. We'll have most of the plants you saw here, except for the plum tree that is not available in the industry right now. Yuri took out all the plants in pots just about everywhere, and that one takes a long time to grow. So it's going to be a couple of years before we start seeing Mexican plum trees again. But anyway, so if you have one, protect it. And that's the end of my talk. I want to thank you all for coming. I'll take questions. A couple of minutes if anyone had a question right in the front. It's iron. It helps the plants take up nitrogen. It's iron. You can also use liquid iron. McIntyre's or Home Depot, one of those places. Yeah. Way in the back. She really wants that. Which? Blue mist flower. Yes, the blue mist flower is very good. That one is the summer bloomer. There's several blue mist flowers. There's Greg's mist flower. There's a shrubby one that stays put. And there's another one that takes more water. And we will have the Greg's mist flower. I'm not sure if we're going to have the shrubby blue mist flower. But we'll have a lot of different plants that I didn't show today.